how did I start writing this book? I mean, how do I create stories? How do I figure out, okay, this is how it will be. This is how the book will be. My name is Pepper, and I have two characters, Leslie and Alexander. Okay, how did I decide? How did I decide? First of all, I am an intuitive writer, and there are actually two kinds of writers: intuitive and conceptual. These are like non-intuitive writers. So intuitive writers, these are the people who tends to write based on feelings, intuition, and they write stories based on the question, does it feel right? High conceptual writers, they have these concepts, preconceived concepts. Or let's say I like to write something like Star Wars. I want to write something like Nicholas Sparks. I want to have something like maybe Stephen King kind of vibe, or something like that. These are conceptual writers, and they plot. They plot. They create outlines and all that to make sure that this scene is there, blah blah blah. I am an intuitive writer, so I don't have outlines. I don't. I just have my old manuscript as a reference of, okay, this is what I wrote when I was 2018, so that's like 6 years ago, so that's like 24. When I was 24, I went back as 30-year-old woman. I went back to my 24-year-old self. So that meant I reviewed my journals, my diaries, my everything that I noted. I've written all the bad stuff that I've experienced, how bad or how worse was I back then, because I'm really an unhealthy individual mentally. So I have my history of eating disorder. I have my history at 24. It was really the worst chapter of my life. I have all this shit. I inflict myself. I self-inflict myself to hurt myself, thinking that I don't deserve all the love in the world because I deserve just the hate and pain. And to calm myself down, I tend to hurt myself. I cut myself. Trigger warning to those who have those who have the same problems as me. Trigger warning. I don't want this video to be a trigger to you, but this is just my personal experience when I wrote this book. So these were like the preparatory activities that I've done before I wrote this book. I have to recall who Leslie was, or who was I back then. So because authors, they tend to write characters, because all authors, I assume, they put themselves, a part of themselves, to their characters. Okay? So to write Leslie and Alexander properly, I have to go back to my 24-year-old self. So that means reviewing all the bad shit that I did, all the good shit that I did. Drugs, sex, abuse, narcissistic abuse, childhood trauma, and all that. All the painful stuff I have to recall. That means I have to relive the pain. So that means it was painful to write this. And one thing that I really like to note is I tend to respect my previous selves. Because, for example, in this case, when I wrote My Name is Pepper, I was 24. I wasn't really healthy mentally. Instead of looking at my manuscript as, whoa, just judgment, pure judgment, like, oh, why is this there? Or like the rational side of you, the rational side of me tends to judge my old self. I tried not to do that. Instead, I treated it with respect and just do the work. That means write it objectively. I have to have the objective lens to write it down properly, according to, the publishing standards, not just my emotions. Because, emotions are there. It's really the fuel to put words onto the paper. This is the fuel of your writing process. But then you also have to consider your readers. Your readers are expecting to have a perfect book. Less typos, less grammar mistakes, and all that. So you also have to consider. I also have to consider that. And also, towards the end of the publishing process, you have editing, you have proofreading, copy editing, line-by-line editing. You also have the developmental editing. So while I'm handling my emotions in the process to write characters like these, I decided to handle this process during the first draft. Like, I could write anything, like limitless. Like, this is emotionally charged moment. I allow myself, my emotions to drive the purest, the rawest of me to the draft. But after that, once it's finished, I set it aside for a few weeks. At that time, I set it aside for 2-3 weeks, and then I worked on it again. So by the time that I worked on it again, I produced another draft. So that's like the third draft, because the first draft is when I finished it in 2018. So the one I finished this last year, I mean, that's the second draft where I put all my emotions and all and blah blah. The next one is the third draft. So that's when the developmental editing comes in. That's where my perfectionism has to come out. This is the time I allow myself to be perfectionist, because anyway, the draft is there. I mean, the story is there, the plot is there. I don't need to add anything. I just have to consider what is right according to the publishing standards. So you consider the editor's mindset. You consider the reader's mindset. What are they expecting of you? What would they be inspired by your book cover? Like the ISBNs and everything. Like everything, the technicalities, the technical side of the publishing world. Yeah. So yeah, that's how I wrote my first novella. And if this is something that you like to hear from me, like the process of self-publishing, the process of writing the stories, how do I figure out the characters, how do I decide things, let me know in the comment section below. And if you don't have the copy yet, please get a copy of My Name is Pepper. It's still out on ebook stores worldwide, from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple Books, Google Play, and across ebook stores. It's even available on Thalia.de for German speakers, for German audiences. Some of which were available in some bookstores in Italy and other non-English speaking countries. So I hope that this book will reach to you, and I hope you enjoyed the story if you've ever read it. And if you did have read it, please leave feedback. It will help me a lot. And I also have Goodreads profiles, so if you've read any of my previous works, you can leave comments there, feedback on my works. And you can also do on Amazon, wherever you got the book. Please provide feedback, so it will help me improve my craft. I want you to be part of this writing journey, because, well, writing a book is already a lonely process. It's not really lonely that is, negatively lonely. It's just, it requires to be alone. To write a book requires to be alone. But it doesn't have to be alone all the time. You don't have to be alone all the time. And I know today we have the pandemic of loneliness, but it doesn't have to be, because we're supposed to be interconnected. We have the internet now. I mean, yeah. Bye.